Hey everyone, so this is Rosewood, Season 2, Episode 19, called Naegleria and Neighborhood Watch. So I'm going to do this episode from main storyline, talking about the main storyline first, and then the sort of B storyline instead of going chronologically. And basically, the main storyline is there is this vigilante named Santo, who goes by the name Santo, targeting the Cali Ocho Cartel and Little Havana. And the vigilante never kills anybody, but always uses a baton to subdue these people and make sure they're caught by the police. And apparently, Slade gets a tip about the vigilante striking next, but it's too late because when they get to the place where the tip is at, we find this guy dead. We come to find out this guy is named Dax Honeycutt, and we're trying to figure out who Santo is. They're trying to figure out who Santo is and everything, and all that stuff. We're trying to figure out who he is and stop him, and so basically, we come to find out that Dax used to be in the army, and when Rosie and Villa go to check out his place, they find this reporter named Ian, who's nicknamed Eagle Eye Ian, with the mask on his face, and figure that he is Santo based on his attire, but based on the impressions left by the baton that was used on Dax, the baton that Ian had is not the same one. Anyway, so after they clear Ian, they're still trying to figure it out, and they come across this, support group that Dax spent $20 every Thursday around 5 p.m. to go to. Since, people in the military deal with things that nobody else, civilians, don't see. So, it's kind of like a paintball place. I mean, it's not exactly, I don't want to call it a paintball game that you do in real life, but it's kind of, it seems like it's kind of similar. Anyway, so we come across that guy who owns and runs it, whose name is Asa. But anyway, so we also come to find out that Dax was suffering from algae exposure, specifically Naegleria fowleri, and it was found in his system and all that. And he was also suffering from black fever, I believe they said black fever. And there were, where he got the black fever was from when he was tortured in Syria. He had gone on a mission with his unit, and the 10 people that went with him had gone over to Syria, and they got captured and were tortured. One of the people in his unit, named Carly Velasco, died from her torture in Syria. So, we come to find out that Asa was engaged to Carly, and we also find out that Dax was actually Santo. He was a vigilante, and that he promised that before him and Carly went on the mission in Syria, she had, revealed to him that she wanted to get justice for her neighborhood in Little Havana, because they had started, getting brutal with crime and stuff. Like, their crime rate was going up, and so she wanted to do something about it. And so she wanted to, when she got back from the mission, she wanted to, be like a vigilante or something like that for her neighborhood. And so Asa pretty much begged Dax to make sure that Carly got back safe, because they were engaged. Who wouldn't want their fiance to come back safely if they're overseas? So when that didn't happen and she got killed, Asa blames Dax, and so he killed Dax for it, for having in a roundabout way killing her, and so that's why Dax was dressing up as Santo, being a vigilante and all that stuff. So that was the whole basically main storyline. There were two other storylines. The B storyline was after the previous episode, Rosie decided to take Slade's kidney, and so throughout the episode, you saw Pippi taking lead on making sure Rosie and Slade would feel at home at the hospital while undergoing the transplant and the recovery afterwards. So and we get a little background on how this all came to be, and how she like, you saw in the episode how she was like, taking charge and like being like a bulldozer with it. Basically, it started out when Rosie, was very sick the first time. Donna and Rosewood Senior, or Beaumont Senior, let her take lead on making sure that Rosie was feeling all right in the hospital, and was not home in the hospital. And I gave her a sense of, responsibility and all that. So that's why she was like, bulldozing and taking charge and all that. So I can't at first when she was, taking like kind of steaming ahead, and I was a little about it, because I wasn't sure how. I mean, I didn't like the way she was just like running through people, but after hearing that, I can see why she would feel like need to, charge on through. I mean, I get it. She felt like she had some responsibility at such a young age and stuff. So I'll cut her some slack for now. But anyway, I guess there's like three minor storylines after the main one. The first one being the transplant. The second kind of has to deal with the transplant, sort of, but not kind of. It's Beaumont Senior coming back to make sure Rosie is all right, and make sure he's there to support Rosie. And Pippi is upset about it, because she feels that Beaumont Senior, after Donna and Beaumont Senior got divorced, he just sort of checked out of the family and didn't even come around to help the family with anything, emotionally or otherwise. Like when Pippi and TMI broke up, he wasn't there to help support her with that, and anything like that. So, and it's things like that. That's why she's upset. Like he checked out of the family and only became like a guest within the family. So she's upset about that. because I mean, she wasn't so upset about the divorce. It was the fact that he just left and just didn't come around when other people in the family needed support emotionally, so or what have you. So I mean, but eventually throughout, I think it's either in the middle of the episode or shortly after that, or shortly towards the end, Pippi and her dad talk, and they resolve it, and he steps up and is there for her. So and then the last sort of minor storyline is with Villa and her brother, and Marcos feels like Villa doesn't distinguish herself between cop and being a sister. She doesn't put down the walls of being a cop. She is cop 24/7, 365 days a year. Like, she doesn't let that down at all, for the most part. And so I think he said something about how that's why he didn't feel like he could talk to her about anything, whether it was him coming back because of being dishonorably discharged, or whatever it is. He feels like she doesn't, allow for people to talk to her. And he brings up the point about how he knew this because there was this woman that Villa and Rosie went to go talk to during the case, and that was in Little Havana, and that both Villa and Marcos grew up in Little Havana, and so Marcos kept in touch with the woman that Villa and Rosie went to go talk to during the case, and he knew, and Marcos knew about how the woman had kids, and so he asked her how her kids were and stuff, and Villa didn't know any of this. So Marcos was concerned that she didn't want to keep in touch with anybody from the old neighborhood. She explains it's because everybody in the neighborhood reminds her of their father, who walked out on them when they were younger. So that's why it was always tough for her to come back and talk with people from the old neighborhood. So it seems like they're like everybody, whether it's Villa and her family or Rosie and his family, are trying to communicate better, and which I'm glad to see, because communication is pretty key in things. So basically, at the end of the episode, though, I wanted to save that for last. It looked when Rosie and Slade are in the hospital about waiting to go into surgery. There was a complication with Slade's part of the surgery. Because from what I saw, it looked like they took Slade's kidney, and then there was a complication. It looks like, and they cut out. They cut to black basically before you can find out for sure if Slade is dead or if he's not dead. And based on the previews for Friday's episode, we don't know if he's truly dead or not, because they didn't show anybody crying profusely or anything. What they did show on the preview for Friday was a man was murdered out in the countryside, in the Floridian countryside, and it looks like, it's not that it looks like it is. The guy who was murdered was TMI's first boyfriend. So, like I said, they didn't show whether or not Slade was definitively dead, so we're gonna just have to see what happens in the first few minutes of the episode. But yeah, basically that's the entire episode. Overall, I really like this one. Seeing as how I didn't like how the first part of the first 5 episodes of this season started off, I didn't really like it. So, especially with the whole thing with Gerald and Via tracking down her late husband's murder and all that. I didn't like how they handled those 2 episodes, or those 2 situations, I should say. I didn't like how they handled those, but overall, the second half of this season is pretty good. It's pretty stellar. So I mean, like I said, I didn't think the first 5 or 7 episodes were that great. Mainly because of how they wrote those particular 2 scenarios. So, but so far, second half is pretty good. So I'm excited to see what happens next with Slade, if anything happens with him. But yeah, I'm excited to see what happens further and all that. So until Friday, or until next week. And I am sorry for putting this up 2 days late. Bye.